So when we started the business, we did not bring in capital for, I think, over a year. My co-founder and I did not pay ourselves, and we did not really have anything structurally supporting the business. And I'm really grateful for that because it allowed us to be super thoughtful about every decision we made and spend a lot of time listening before doing, which is the biggest thing I think you should consider as a founder before spending money or hiring people or raising a round.
Today on the PlayBridge podcast, we are joined by Julia Haber. After spending some time at Spotify and Snap, Julia started her first company, Wave, an experiential marketing agency while in college, which worked with brands like AT&T, Shopify, Rent the Runway, and Refinery29. She is currently the co-founder and CEO of Home from College, a professional development platform built for students just establishing their careers. The platform works with well over 2,000 brands and has students represented across every college campus in the United States. Julia is another new friend from TikTok. We met earlier this year at her office in Santa Monica. And in August, we co-hosted an amazing event for female founders and investors in LA. So very excited to finally have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I feel like we need to do a million more events. It was such a success and so much fun. So thanks to TikTok for bringing us together.
Literally. So when we first met, you told me your crazy story, your crazy founding story about how before COVID, you were actually working on a completely different business, Soho Houses for college campuses. So tell us what happened and how you ended up starting Home from College.
It is truly a crazy story, and you cannot plan for life. But my first company, Wave, I started while I was in college, and I took it full time when I graduated. And through that, I had been to over 75 college campuses across the country. So spent a lot of time living and breathing through the perspective of students and realized that there was this kind of third space needed, similar to the way that Starbucks kind of used to operate, and the way that a lot of these social clubs and co-working spaces exist, needed an experience in an environment that supported students coming together, learning outside the classroom from this kind of cool brand perspective, and had this thesis to build not as exclusive from a Soho House standpoint, but physical spaces. And my co-founder had a private equity real estate background, and we came together and signed I think close to 10 leases across the country, opening these physical spaces that were supposed to launch in September 2020. And we had raised some money for the business and were really bullish on the concept. And then literally March, 15th happened. And I looked at him and I said, there's absolutely no chance that anything we just built is going to happen because every student is going home from college. And the likelihood that we'll be able to build out and finish these spaces for September is 0%. So let's get out of these leases. And because we moved really quickly, it was before it became an alarmist time. So the real estate agents and the brokers were still confident they'd be able to fill leases. So we were able to break hours pretty easily. And we basically bought the domain homefromcollege.com. I actually think it was March 25th. 2020, and threw up a landing page with no idea what it would be, and just started talking to thousands of college students, understanding what they were experiencing through their pain points of really a lost perspective on what to do with their lives while the world was so scary with everything happening with COVID, and took a lot of time to listen before we figured out what Home from College would be today. But it was a crazy time, and it almost didn't even feel like it was it wasn't an option to pivot, but we just had the right instinct at the right moment. And I think it's so important to listen to that from a gut perspective.
I mean, it sounds like you had put in a lot of sweat and tears into that original business idea. How were you just able to pivot and kind of leave behind all of that work?
I think I have a short-term memory loss, and I think it's actually a great quality as a founder. So if you are a founder or you want to become a founder, if that is a quality you identify with, it will for sure help you, because there are so many things that you're going to do while you build a business that you don't want to remember or put mental or physical energy around, because it takes so much to make something out of nothing, that I was able to move really quickly. And I also, I think, subconsciously realized the actual hurdles that that business would have taken. It would have been incredibly taxing, very expensive, a really challenging time to bring that to life. And I was honestly pretty burnt out from being physically in so many markets, that it was almost like the gates were opening for me for an opportunity. And I listened to that from a gut perspective. So I think ultimately I was able to look the other way, because the alternative, I think, would have also been super challenging. So it almost gave me a clean start without the emotional burden of having to, think about something without anything on the other side.
Okay, so you pivoted, you bought the homefromcollege.com domain. How did you get the first version of Home from College off the ground? And what were some of those first conversations like with all those college students? What were some of those things you were hearing from them?
I think what we tapped into was something deeply emotional beyond COVID, which was, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I have so much pressure to figure it out because I'm in so much debt, and I don't know who I am or what I'm going to be when I graduate. And that's a really scary thing for me. And it was only heightened because of COVID. So giving students this space to even just let that out was really powerful, because everybody has this persona of, I have my shit together in college, because nobody wants to show what they're feeling underneath it all. And we gave a space for that. So when we threw up this landing page, we ended up doing focus groups every day for, I would say, almost 6 months straight with thousands of students across the country. And we built it under this brand of this cool older sister persona. So not your parent telling you to get a job, not the school forcing you to do it, but this third entity, which kind of is reflective of that third space we were physically building, but built that digitally through our brand. And we tried a bunch of things in the beginning, but the main insight we learned was, how do I get experience if I don't have experience? And that is the biggest question, because everybody forces on you this concept of having an internship. But when we looked at it statistically, 90% of students graduate without ever having an internship. So the fact that the market is so small for those who have access, we realized, what if we created a product that allowed you to try a bunch of things without a lot of skill, that allowed you to do it remotely, because the world is now remote in COVID, and that's going to change, giving you a chance to learn about yourself and who you are and what you want to do and what your skills are without a big commitment or imposter syndrome. And that was really the foundation of our core product today, called The Gig. And for companies, we call it GAS, Gen Z Access as a Service. So very much like Fiverr, Upwork, very flexible, from product testing, focus groups, Gen Z advisory panels, ambassador programs, research, really anything where Gen Z would be valuable in bringing into the conversation. And for students, a great way to always make money and build their professional experience and professional brand without a big, scary lift. And that really resonated, and we did it manually. We were matching students and companies manually for about a year to try and understand how to build it from a product standpoint. And then we launched our SaaS product, I would say, well, we call it GAS product, about a little over a year ago. So spent a lot of time listening before we put pen to paper or even raise money, so that we had structure to know what was coming up.
That's an insane stat that 90% of college students don't ever get internships. That is wild to me. I definitely remember, especially after freshman year, I really wanted to intern, but it wasn't until maybe junior year that big companies would come. I went to Wake Forest, and they would come to our schools and recruit for these big internship programs. But outside of those, you couldn't really get them until you're older. And I remember wanting work experience when I was younger, and it was just so difficult to tap into. So I think you guys are tapping into a massive need on both the student side and the company side, because companies obviously want this talent too.
Totally. And it's interesting. We also learned that the schools have a business within the recruitment process. So companies pay on average about $25,000 a day to table at a career service fair. So if you have a limited budget, if you're basically anybody besides, a major company, and even the major companies, they're going to choose to go to the tier one schools rather than the non-tier one options because it costs so much money to do so. So when you think about that, and you think about the implications of that from the workforce and the diversity of the workforce and the access to socioeconomic equality and giving people a chance who don't necessarily come from that access, it's very limiting. So it's actually a systemic issue that starts at the ground floor, and giving people a chance to build their resume and grow over time evens the playing field, which is really the mission of the business.
When you first started, did you find like a specific company or subset of companies to list jobs with home from college? And then similarly, did you target like certain colleges, or what was that first matching like?
So on the student side, we really wanted to identify an audience we call green go-getters. So super motivated, super eager, want to join businesses. The you and me sitting in the front of the classroom, those who people look at who have the process and the relationships kind of together, but don't necessarily come from access. That was kind of our core student audience because we knew they would be the most successful in gigs. And then having companies have successful early experiences would set the foundation for what business would be for our company. The second component was that we went direct to consumer on the student side. So we don't work with schools intentionally. We position ourselves as a consumer-facing brand for students. And that has spread incredibly organically through word of mouth and TikTok. So it didn't require us to choose specific campuses. So that's why we now have representation on every campus, which allows us to own the market without the restrictions of schools. On the company side, we knew we wanted to have and establish a layer of trust between students and companies, because who were we to these students? We didn't have the credibility of maybe a really big HR company or the school saying, go with this resource. So we wanted to partner with brands that students absolutely loved. So out the gate, we partnered with Parade and Steve Madden and Aquaphor and a bunch of these big companies that would provide signaling for smaller businesses. So because we have Aquaphor and we work with Urban Decay and a bunch of other big beauty brands, all the smaller cool niche-y Youthforia, Squigs Beauty, Dum Dum Tokyo all come through because they get the signaling from the bigger brands. And same with the Beyond Meats, who are the kind of better for you plant-based alternative. It opened up the door for all of those businesses. So that allowed that great foundation. And now we're really looking to expand across all industries and verticals as we set up that foundation.
Why did you choose not to partner with schools?
So through my first business, we did partner with schools. We had to sign contracts to essentially allow these physical activations we created to be on campus. And the amount of red tape that we went through to try and get anything to happen was such a burden. And we knew that when somebody like your parent or the school is making you do something, it's not something you necessarily want to do. And that was not in line with the ethos of the brand, specifically as this kind of cool older sister persona. We thought it, and we still believe it's a kind of a cop-out to partner with the school because it's just forced upon you rather than being an active choice. And if we can continue to be an active choice for these students, we'll win because we are student first. Rather than a lot of businesses that target college students, they think about the buyer or the customer rather than the user, and the user is the student. So every decision we make sure it's student first and still beneficial to businesses so that we can maintain that trust and love, throughout the whole experience.
Walk us through an example of one of the job opportunities for students on your site. Are they like shorter term, longer term? Do you get paid?
So every opportunity on the platform is compensated. Home from College through the gig product is an end-to-end solution for companies. So they create their gigs, they list the opportunity, they review candidates. On average, we see students sharing almost 70 data points with us, interests, passions, hobbies. qualitative information about how they think rather than just what they've done. Then students sign contracts through the platform, they submit their hours, and they all get paid directly through the platform. So beyond just a job board, these opportunities don't exist anywhere else. They're really custom for the platform, and it ranges from one-day research projects where a brand is trying to figure out where they should get distribution in a new market, or think about if they're a new alcohol brand, which liquor stores near college campuses should they partner with, or they're Beyond Meat and trying to find distribution partners from a research standpoint around college campuses. That's kind of one bucket. It's more the HR side. So that would be more traditional intern-like roles, or anywhere where you need actual work being done by college students. So that could be research, it could be running your social media, it could be working a pop-up, it could be anything that's more on the HR side, to marketing as well, which is content creation or focus groups, Gen Z advisory panels, ambassador programs. So it really ranges from low to no skill to high skill roles, depending on the opportunities, but it's really flexible for companies based on what their needs are, but always compensated for students.
In my era of college, there was like a ton of unpaid internships. So it's good to see that that is quickly changing. So I know you share a ton of advice on your own TikTok channel about how to succeed in the hiring process. What advice would you have for college students applying to gigs on Home from College, and how they can stand out and get those roles?
So we take a lot of time to think about allowing students to show the full breadth of who they are, from interests, passions, hobbies, more personal information. We created this game called IQ. And when we thought about the branding of it, IQ is not something you can change, your actual IQ you're born with, but we created this game called Interview Questions, or IQ, that allows you to answer questions that other companies ask in interviews on your direct HFC resume. So a company will ask, describe a time you overcame an obstacle in a workplace dynamic. Describe a time you worked well with a teammate. And all of these questions are curated in this game called IQ, and students can answer as many questions as they'd like, that to supplement their profile. And what we've heard from companies is the more IQ questions you answer, the better picture you get of who you are as an applicant. It's great that you work at Starbucks and you are part of the student council, and we love that, but there's nothing more valuable than learning through the lens of your personal experiences, and that typically isn't captured pre-interview. So we wanted to create an opportunity to show how you think before you actually get to have that one-on-one conversation. So answering a ton of those types of questions is incredibly valuable to show beyond just kind of the surface level picture of who you are. And we love to see when students answer those.
I also love that that gives students probably a bit of a chance to prepare and not feel like the stress of an interview that I know personally can just like totally throw me off and is not always like the best show of what I'm truly like. So I think that's awesome. Moving a little bit to your strategy, your own personal strategy, as well as Home from College's strategy on TikTok. Why did you guys first get on the platform, and what kind of like success and growth have you seen out of that channel?
So we started on TikTok with Home from College, I'd say about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. We knew that we wanted to embody this cool older sister persona, and that's all of our target audience is on TikTok, and they're scrolling and they're stressed. And TikTok is obviously, I don't have to explain this to you, a pain point driven platform. So when you describe something emotional and personal that you're going through and other people relate, it does really well. And Nicole, who runs our TikTok, it's funny, she actually went to high school with me, and I think like 7 years younger than her, and she's followed my entrepreneurial journey and joined Home from College early and had this passion for TikTok. She had never had an experience ever in her life or ever created content. And she learned the platform, learned the algorithm, learned what resonated, and grew the platform. I think we're about 60K followers now, all which has been acquired organically, and have a bunch of big plans there. But a lot of what works super well for us is pain point solutions. So actually a lot of product visuals of gigs, specifically getting the chance to have paid experience without experience, and showing that through the product on the platform, not like an ad, but more like with a trending audio during a pain point, during a moment that's very relevant for students. That converts super well. It's not even just converting to followers. TikTok has been from a top to bottom of funnel conversion platform for us. We almost get 1-to-1 user growth based on views, which is crazy. We get, on videos that go super viral, we'll see an insane spike in users on platform, not just followers on the account. So that's super motivating for us to think about the future of communicating properly and thinking about not paying for acquisition, because as long as we can get our story told through an organic lens, then there's the potential for real growth.
Have you focused on any other marketing channels, or really that has been the true grind and focus?
We gave up on Instagram for a little bit because we were exhausted by it and fatigued. And I'm sure a lot of people feel similarly to that. But really, we brought on an amazing social media strategist who came in to kind of reboot what our Instagram could be. And it was kind of sitting somewhere at 17K for a while and kind of losing followers, not knowing how to resonate. And over the last 3 months have gone to almost 50K, which is awesome. And I think it's a lot to do with Reels, but I think these platforms are having such identity crises that it's very hard to root your full acquisition strategy in social. So as we think towards kind of new products we build, we think a lot about product-led growth. So thinking about acquiring customers through the lens of other customers, through the lens of the product, and having that be a loop rather than being dependent on platforms from acquisition. We don't have plans to pay for acquisition on either side of the platform and have never spent $1. So I think we'll just have to be creative and thoughtful. And I think that will continue to be aligned with our brand.
You got to take advantage of these platforms while you can. But to your point, you truly never know if they're going to go away. So just got to take advantage while we all can. So that's where my head is at as well. I'd love to talk a little bit now about your fundraising journey. I know previously you've raised a pre-seed, and you just shared with me that you have accepted a term sheet for a seed round, I believe. Amazing. Congratulations. For both rounds, can you share just a little bit about the amount of money you raised, who you raised from, and just any strategies that you can share for other female founders who might be listening about how to have an effective fundraise?
The first thing I'll say, and when I would listen to these podcasts and hear people talk about their stories, I would think that whatever that person said was what my experience would be. And what I've learned is there is no true one path to how you get this done. And if you're listening to this thinking about how you're going to go about your fundraising approach, do not take whatever I say as gold, because everyone experiences things differently. And so much of it has to do with the climate you're raising in, the way that you present yourself, the opportunity that you have created, and the traction you have. But I think the most important thing to know in general is where you're at and how your goals align with whatever capital you're bringing on. So when we started the business, we did not bring in capital for, I think, over a year. My co-founder and I did not pay ourselves, and we did not really have anything structurally supporting the business. And I'm really grateful for that, because it allowed us to be super thoughtful about every decision we made and spend a lot of time listening before doing, which is the biggest thing I think you should consider as a founder before spending money or hiring people or raising a round. We raised a pre-seed round in 2021, a year after we had legally incorporated the business, after spending a ton of time. And we raised that money off of basically wireframes and learnings of what we saw from the market and the pain point we were solving for. We brought on one lead that's called Peak Six. It's a huge financial institution out of Chicago with, I think, close to $6 billion under management. They make strategic investments in early stage businesses, and they came on to lead that round. And then we brought in a bunch of relationships and angels that I've built over the years who have supported my career. And the way to do that is by keeping these people so up to speed on everything, asking for mentorship, sharing ideas, keeping them in the loop. They want to support you in your journey. So at the pre-seed level, I think having one person that can come in and be a validator to then bring in the other people is huge. And we were able to do that, one, with an institution, and two, we brought in one angel that really signaled to a whole cohort to come on, which was very helpful. And that would be one approach I would take at that pre-seed stage. Kind of thinking about the growth of your business after pre-seed, we were so scrappy with how we spent our money. We were incredibly thoughtful. We did not go in and hire a ton of people. Basically, up until, I would say, 6 months ago, we were my co-founder, myself, and one engineer, even though we had raised almost $2 million in pre-seed funding. So we were intentionally very scrappy to continue to learn what was working, what was not working, and only build things after we had done them manually and needed tech to improve them. And that is an approach I think really works, so that you don't overbuild or overcomplicate before you even know what you're doing. That's kind of one kind of bullet point. When thinking about raising a larger institutional round, I had always been really nervous about it and had this story in my head that it's the worst. It makes you feel like shit. Investors suck. I am like, founders for life type of vibe. And I went into this current financing process and said, this is going to be the most fun. I'm going to treat every conversation like a potential to grow my network. I'm going to show all the hard work that we've brought to life. And I'm not going to put this negative energy out there because I feel like it translates. And that was a very conscious approach that I took in this process in raising our first real, truly institutional round. And I think it's a privilege to be there because we had worked really hard to be a profitable business and had a substantial amount of traction, which set us up well for those conversations. But I think even if you're not in that place, putting out that positive energy and that juju will make a difference, because inevitably, if you are resenting the process or feeling frustrated about the power dynamic, it comes through, and nobody wants somebody that's thirsty. So I think it's something, that is something you can control no matter what stage your business is, and put yourself in an environment when you can set yourself up for success in that way.
And why? Because I remember, I think we've had this conversation. Originally, you were thinking you were not going to raise additional capital. So what really made you go after that?
So we fortunately had a ton of inbound from investors, and I have no idea. And if there are investors listening to this, I'd love insight. We must be on some dashboard or something, because over the last couple of weeks/months, we've gotten, close to 10 investors inbounding a week, which is crazy. And I would have never envisioned that dynamic. So I think that has a lot to do with finding organic traction before you need to go out and raise, and try and find one thing that works super well so that these investors can see what's happening. My co-founder and I kind of looked at each other and we said, we could build a really great, profitable business the way we've built it today. And it could be a great business that we could maybe sell and make some money off of. But we said there's so many foundational things that could be the ground floor for a huge business and a huge opportunity. And we would be remiss if we didn't try and seize that and give it everything we got to own the college market. And when we sat and did some financial modeling and thought about how much money we would need to bring in, and thought about what types of partners would make sense, and thought about how that would change our lives from how we operate the business, we said, we're ready for it. And started entertaining those conversations and being really thoughtful. And I think this is so important when you're fundraising, is qualifying who the hell you're talking to. And I would highly recommend, if you can, to only talk to the decision maker. This is not a knock to any principal or any associate, but if you are not talking to somebody who can say yes to the dress, don't do it, because your story will then be going through a long line of telephone that is totally lost in translation, even if the person on the right side sounds excited. And we took that approach to say, we're only going to talk to a lead investor and we're only going to talk to the decision maker. And that meant we only had a couple of conversations because you get inbound from people who are not necessarily that decision maker. So that really helped us qualify up top. Is this fund large enough to lead our round? Do they actually do this? Are they deploying capital? And am I talking to the right decision maker here? And that will save you so much time and energy that you could be using to put in the right direction. And that's one thing I would definitely take the time and energy to do before you even go out and build a process.
Yeah, definitely don't want to waste any time when this is already a kind of brutal process. But that is literally so epic that you are getting so much inbound. I mean, you deserve it more than anyone I know. All of the hard work is very obvious. One, can you share who you are accepting investment from? And since you had a good amount of inbound, like how did you think about what investors might be the perfect fit for Home from College?
Yeah, we're an interesting business because we kind of sit in HR from, a talent perspective. We kind of sit in consumer tech because we have this business that could have the foundation of being the next LinkedIn. So there's a social network component that could come in. We are a future of work platform. So people who have a thesis in future of work came in off the bat from this audience. But before we tried to raise kind of like maybe a year ago when we were thinking about it or what that would look like, we got so many people that came in and said, oh my God, it's a graveyard space. There's so many people that tried. I don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. And what we realized was we were too specific in what we were pitching today as our current business rather than what the future business would be. And before you raise a Series A, you have the opportunity to tell the vision of what you will be rather than being held to metrics that you are. And that is something that I wish I knew 12 months ago, because we sat down and said, who do we want to be in 5 to 7 years? And what does that look like? And that allowed us to think about this multi-product positioning, where we're building a ton of products that support college students. We have today a gig product and a resume product, but we sat down and brainstormed with the team and came up with 10 other sub products that could be under this Home from College umbrella, which makes it very hard to not see $1 billion opportunity if you like it. If you look at Home from College as just a gig platform today, you could say, yeah, there's a lot of gig marketplaces there. Like, why do I care? So I think it's about coming up with the story that tells a big vision and practicing that vision and believing it so that comes through. So for us, the right partner was somebody who had experience or had the ability to think about building multiple products under one from this kind of HR, future of work, Gen Z perspective. And we just signed our term sheet with Google Ventures. And for us, they couldn't be a more perfect partner because they did something really special in bringing operators into our partner pitch so that we could talk tactically about what our business could be. So there was design leads from Google. There was product leads there. There were people on the HR side, which we could kind of banter about what the product could be. And it allowed us to see the value of the resources beyond the capital from the infrastructure of a partner like Google. And we didn't even know, but we've now experienced that they are just the perfect partner to help us scale to be, beyond just a capitally funded business, but with really smart people around the table that we would probably otherwise not be able to afford.
Truly so epic. So excited for you guys. Speaking to some of those ideas and your vision for the future of how you're going to build this into $1 billion company, can you share any of those ideas with us?
Yeah, there's the two foundational products, the gig and our other product called the Resume Studio, which really came out of a bunch of insights that said everybody needs to establish a professional brand, but for most of Gen Z, they are not doing that on LinkedIn. I think almost 90% of college students are not on LinkedIn, or Gen Z specifically are not on LinkedIn and don't have the intention to be, because it's really like a phone book of your professional network. It doesn't actually show your personal brand. And we know that the time of the resume will evolve in what the resume looks like and how it's utilized, and if there'll be videos and if there'll be audio recordings, whatever that looks like. But there will always be this, like, we call it like almost like the common app, like this centralizer, the ACT, the SAT that everyone needs to have. And when we did research, we learned that most students don't have a home for where they consistently build their resume. And that was a pain point where students, we'd say, hey, if you had to edit your resume today, how would you do it? They'd say, well, I would boot up my old computer that has the that has the file from Microsoft Word saved on my desktop, and I'd have to try and find a way to edit it, but then the formatting would be all messed up, and then I didn't even know if it was going to be right for the job I was applying to. And then I'd submit it and never know if I heard back. So we basically said, wow, there's like 20 insights all within this, but it led us to build our second product today called the Resume Studio. And it takes kind of the best of Google Docs from a document management perspective, plus a dynamic collaborative editor mixed with some components of Canva with validated resume templates built specifically for companies, mixed with a doc send like trackability. So seeing who opened it, downloaded, and shared it. And that product has been in beta for about 2 months. We've had almost 300,000 resumes created through that tool already, which is crazy. And it kind of sucks. Like we need to improve it a lot, but it showed us that there was foundation for that. So when thinking about kind of like the data capture we're aggregating from that mixed with the professional experience and capturing bank accounts and people's interests and passions and hobbies, that builds the foundation for a lot of potential, either for kind of like in the neobank space or thinking about like a Glassdoor for Gen Z or these different buckets that solve pain points, but using the two core kind of beachheads, the gig and the Resume Studio, as the opportunity to capture that information and grow from there.
I'm laughing because editing my PDF resume was like literally the bane of my existence. And I think in my head, I was like, I'm the only idiot that like can't figure this out.
No,
so I feel better that this is a common problem.
Totally. No one knows how to do it. Yeah, it's painful. So hopefully you'll never need a resume again because you'll be working for yourself or doing whatever you want. But if you need to edit it, check out the Resume Studio.
So much is happening. What do you see as next for Home from College, like in the next few months?
It's a really exciting time because we're going to be capitalized in a way beyond what we were expecting for this seed round or a seed plus. And it will really allow us to bring in experts and teammates across all sides of the business. So we were just whiteboarding out kind of what the future org chart will be. So I think it's going to be a lot of hiring and a lot of building the foundation of the two products. And for the first time, really going to market, which is going to be really fun. I love the potential of the marketing side of this business and having the ability to put resources there and grow the team and continue to build kind of that ethos and culture will be the most important thing. But yeah, we will be hiring. So if you're listening to this and looking for a job at a fast-paced startup, let me know.
Any specific roles you already have in mind that you want to shout out?
Yeah, there's going to be, so on all sides of the business, from the engineering side, really a VP of Eng, a product designer, a product marketing manager, an account manager, a SVP of sales. I have a full list, but I think the SVP of sales and the enterprise account executive would be two really great roles. And then on the technical side, there will be a bunch. So
lots of opportunities. If people want to apply, maybe that are listening to this show, is there a good way to flag their resume to you?
Yeah, they can email me directly and we can give my contact, or they can DM us on Instagram or go on Home from College and check out jobs. And there will be open roles there as well.
Amazing. And as we start to wrap things up, can you share a female founder, investor, or a leader who inspires you and a little bit about why?
So I was thinking about this because you asked this question at our panel. And I think it's really hard to choose who resonates in that way. I actually want to share a friend of mine who I'm always inspired by. We met through the internet as well. And her name is Asia Mayrock. She's actually a poet, and she does a bunch of amazing projects and works with a ton of really meaningful brands to tell a story of, things that are not as they're a little bit more cliche to talk about, whether it's mental health or pain points you experience in your life. She does it through spoken word poetry, which I think is so beautiful and has a really meaningful connection. And she spent a lot of time telling the stories of Holocaust survivors through her social media channels and has built an amazing community there. And I love how she uses her platform for good. So she is a friend and a female founder who I think is someone people should definitely follow. And her name is Asia Mayrock. She's the best.
Shout out to Asia, and I will make sure to look her up and include all of her details in the bio as well. And then finally, where can people find you? Where can they find Home from College?
I'm out here learning all that I can from Ruffin from TikTok. So you can check me out on TikTok, julia.haber, and then on Instagram, Julia Haber. And then, just anywhere there's social media, hopefully we'll be there and growing. So check out Home from College as well on TikTok and Instagram. And if you ever want to join Home from College as a company or a student, just sign up on homefromcollege.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show, and just so excited for all of the amazing news that we get to share that's happening with Home from College.
Thank you for having me, and I love this conversation. Let's do more of it.